Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
All right, I want to welcome everybody today. We are very excited with our program today on the Norris Group podcast. Today, I am honored to have Rich Rice. He is the president of Inland Empire Real Estate Investors Club. Since diving into real estate in 2017, Rich has masterfully navigated through flipping, wholesaling, and house hacking. He's executed over 100 deals and building a diverse portfolio that spans short and long-term rentals, mobile homes, and note creation. His passion for community and knowledge sharing propelled him to acquire the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club in 2021. Providing a vibrant platform for investors to learn, grow, and succeed together. Rich just doesn't preach investment strategies. He shares generously from the pages of his own journey, ensuring that every insight, lesson, and strategy he imparts is deeply rooted in real, lived experiences and tangible success. Rich, man, I am so excited. I got to meet you and your girlfriend this past weekend, and it is an honor to have you on the podcast, man. I really appreciate you being here.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm the event that I just met you at was amazing, and I'm excited for all the things that you and the Norris Group and your other ventures are getting into. And just really excited to be here on the show. Normally, I'm on the other end of this thing, like I said, so I'm excited to be the other side.
Listen, one of the things that I like to do, especially when we're having, a new guest on with us, is I like to try to get our audience to know a little more about you before we just dive into real estate and everything else. So if it's all right, I just want to dive into, who is Rich Rice? How did you get to where you're at? Right. So I guess the first thing is tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're originally from.
All right. So I grew up in Anaheim. I was originally, it's funny, I was born in New Mexico, but my parents left when I was 3. I try not to claim it. I really wish they would have just had me here in California. But anyways, I've lived here since I was 3. I went to college in Phoenix, to Arizona State. And I really kind of fell into real estate back in 2017. I got involved with my parents flipping homes, and then kind of went from there. But outside of real estate, I like to bowl. I like to camp. I got an RV. We're taking an RV trip here pretty soon. My girlfriend's actually pregnant. We're due in October, so I'm going to be a dad here soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's that's going to be a big change, obviously. And, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I like to have fun outside of real estate. I've always, even when I was in the corporate world, I just knew that I really, I just felt like I was meant for something better as far as I wanted to climb the corporate ladder for so long. And when I started climbing it and dealing with corporate politics and stuff like that, I just realized that wasn't for me, and tried to find financial independence, financial freedom, stumbled along, had to go back into the workforce. And then, later on it was just as miserable. And finally just went into real estate at some point, and still chasing that goal and trying to spread it to other people. We really, we started leaning into this FIRE brand, financial independence through real estate. We kind of made that the primary actually recently we made that the name of our event center over in Riverside. And now that is like the number one kind of overarching brand. Inland Empire Real Estate Club's kind of fallen under that. So we got a lot in the works. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for right now. I just got done helping a neighbor putting together an option contract for a neighbor whose power got turned off. So I'm just trying to, keep going. and, see what the future is going to hold. So
That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
listen, all right. So you said Anaheim. So I'm gonna be honest. I would be remiss, and also I've got 2 daughters. I think you met one of them this past weekend, but
Mhm.
they would kill me if I didn't find out about this because we're from Florida. I mean, not originally from, but we've lived here for 20 years. So my kids pretty much all they've known is Florida. So all right, I got to ask. You grew up in Anaheim. Did you love or hate the Mouse? Right? I mean,
I actually worked for the Mouse at one point.
shut the front door. Really?
Yeah, it was my first. So I worked through high school. I worked at the high school theater. It was a really nice, very fully equipped theater that was nicer than probably most colleges in the area. And so I worked there doing rentals, and that's where I learned how to do lighting and sound, and I ended up doing all of that for our event center. It saved a lot of money. I don't know if saved a lot of my time, but it saved the club a lot of money. Because those guys make bank. But it's funny, I didn't want to go into that as a job because it was kind of like it was feast or famine. It was, you do a job and a gig over like a week or a weekend or whatever, and you make really good money, and then you wouldn't have anything for a while. And so I didn't think that was for me. And here we are 20 years later, and it's feast or famine on deals. So,
Yeah.
But anyways, I did work for my first job, even though I had worked through high school, my first like real job, working for somebody else other than, my school or my friends and family and stuff, was I worked for Disney. I worked for Disneyland. I was an outdoor vendor. I sold the churros and the pretzels and and it was all cash back then. There was no registers on those carts, so we did everything out of like our cash apron or cash drawer. I remember the most I did was like I was on the churro wagon in front of the Haunted Mansion on 4th of July, and I sold $5,000 worth of churros all in cash and had to deal out change, and my fund at the end of the night was only off by like $100.
Wow.
And but yeah, I only did it for like 4 months, and then they cut everybody's hours at the end of the summer. And I ended up getting a really good job for James Hardy, which is where I did most of my sales career at. I ended up working for them a lot longer. And so, but yeah, it was a good experience working for Disney. I mean, they have a world-class organization, obviously.
Yep. So in doing a little research, I found out that you went to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you went to an all-boys Catholic school.
Yes, sir. Servite. Yep.
Yeah. So from what I'm seeing on that, they're pretty much a powerhouse in some sports, right?
Yeah, they are. And I didn't particularly want to go to Servite when I was in grade school. That's where my parents wanted me to go. I was trying to get into, I think it was Troy Tech, if I remember correctly, and I didn't get into Troy, but I got into Servite, and I had no idea that they were a powerhouse in sports. My dad was a kind of a jock in high school. Well, not kind of, he was. And, and I guess he just didn't want that for me, because they pulled me out of sports when I was like in, 5th grade and wanted me to focus on school. And, so I, kind of stopped paying attention to sports, but I always still enjoyed it. I was still athletic. And so I ended up going out for the baseball team, and just as a walk-on, tried out for the baseball team, and didn't realize until after I tried out that Servite has a very good baseball program, and there were kids coming to Servite just to play baseball, and they were like, "You really thought you were going to walk on?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, why not?" And my freshman English teacher was actually the varsity baseball coach, and he kind of gave me, I felt like he kind of, like everybody else, every other freshman, just kind of gave everybody crap. And after I tried out, he was like, "You never gave me crap ever again." I think there was like somewhat of respect that I was like, had the guts to try and do it, I guess, when I didn't even really know that I had it. So,
so you're in real estate. So I'm assuming that the baseball career did not go that well for you then.
No, absolutely not. I definitely didn't make the team. So,
well, so listen, you mentioned that later on. So you mentioned later on that you had worked for James Hardy. Give me a little history on that. I mean, obviously, you heard this weekend We've got Trinity that does a lot of framing and shell construction, things like that, as one of our corporations. We use Hardy products quite frequently. So tell me about your time at Hardy. Tell me what you did.
Yeah. So I started out as basically my job was to convert people buying competitive products. So like Wonderboard. For those of you that don't know, James Hardy makes something called Hardy Backer. Yep. It's a cement underlayment. If you don't have cement, if you're not putting tile on cement or like in a bathroom wall or something, you don't want to use drywall. There's other competitors out there. So I was basically, my first job was just talking to contractors and getting them to buy James Hardy products instead of, the other ones out there. And that was supposed to be a temporary position. And I ended up working them for 8 years. And at one point my territory went from, from Santa Barbara all the way down to like Beaumont, which was not as big as it is now. And then all the way out to El Paso. So I had different territories. And I really just was a factory rep for them for years. And I'm mostly on the backer side. I didn't do a whole lot on the siding side. They're actually known as a siding company. Right. But out here siding isn't as large as a business as it is in like the Midwest and, the storm areas and, but it's definitely holds up, and I'm putting it, it's funny. I worked for them for 8 years. I never used, we used to get product for free. Like we could get all the siding for free. And, I didn't own 10 houses back then. And now every time I put Hardy on a house, I'm like, man, I wish I would have stockpiled this stuff or something. But but they ended up putting me through school. I'll always be grateful for that. It didn't really end on a great note. I had some new managers come in. Didn't really see eye to eye with them. I put my foot down. They put their foot down harder, and the rest is history. So, it was, and it's funny, those people, they all left the company within a year.
Yeah.
And, at one point I'd probably still be working for them if things had worked differently, but, definitely was part of the path that put me here now, and I don't regret it, but I appreciate them paying for school. That was a big leg up. So,
all right. So you're at JH and you're working through you're got a big sales territory out of it. Mm-hmm. You had the quote unquote Mexican standoff who's going to do what. What took you from that into real estate investing? How did you kind of start making that shift?
There was another few years before I finally made that shift. I took about a year off. I just went through did some hobbies. I tried to get into like day trading and Forex, and, crypto wasn't really a thing, or was very baby stages back then. And I was just, cause I had a decent savings. So I had the ability to take some time off. I actually moved back to California for a little while. And long story short here, I ended up going back to Arizona and got into the staffing industry. Cause I've always been I have a pretty strong tech background for somebody that didn't work in tech or go into tech. I've just always been a nerd. I was building computers. I used to go into school early, like in 4th grade, 5th grade, to help the computer teacher build computers. So, and I would actually I'd want to go to school early as a 5th grader. That's how big of a nerd I was back then. And, so I understood it. I'd always I built my own websites and computers, and I don't really like minor coding and stuff like that. So I combined the sales experience with kind of the technical know-how, and I did very well in the staffing industry. I placed like senior level software engineers into contract roles where they were getting, they get paid at a certain amount, and then I'd get a cut of what they made basically on an hourly basis. And it was very lucrative, but it was a never ending grind. And I just realized again that I'm not the sales grind. I don't mind grinding and hobbies and things that interest me and real estate because it kind of combines all those things. But grinding for someone else to make somebody else a lot of money is it's not my gig anymore. So to answer your question, sorry, I'm gonna do it. I said the short version and it turned into the long one. I ended up, my parents had been doing, they'd done a few flips, they'd bought a few rentals, and they wanted to really go into, they had recently left their jobs to focus on it full time. And they wanted to expand their business, but they didn't want to bring somebody in that they didn't know and kind of show them the whole gig. So I was at a crossroads and ended up moving back to California and going into business with them. And that was 2017, and just combined, project management and sales and all my background with what they knew about real estate. And we just kind of hybridized our companies and just went to work. And that was, like I said, 7 years ago now. 130 flips later, 30 or 40 wholesale. I don't know. I stopped counting. Somewhere around there.
so you joined with was it your mom and your stepdad? Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Yep.
So you kind of took into what you had done in the past. What did you see was the benefit that you brought to the table that they weren't doing at that time in their real estate career, so to speak? So
it's funny that it's a good question. I originally came in to do the acquisitions side of it. And my stepdad was running all of the, at the time, I mean, they were only doing like 1 or 2 flips a year. And once we started ramping up and doing more, he was running the project, the actual project management side of the flips. And he didn't like it. He still doesn't like it. He was, tearing his hair out on, like juggling, picking up material and contractors and picking out paint and, all that stuff. And he just didn't really like it. And what he liked was talking to people. And, I liked people, but at that point I've been selling people for as a recruiter and a staffing person, for years. I would dial the phone 300 times a day and talk to, 100 people. And I was sick of talking to people, to be honest. Like, I just wanted to, so we switched. I took over the project management stuff, on all the flips, and then he took over on acquisitions and talking to people. And ever since we made that switch, we just kept going. One time we had, I think the most we ever had going, 1 year we did like 11 single families and like 16 mobile homes. That we flipped that year. And that was a great year, but none of us wanted to work that hard, so we don't do that anymore.
I was going to say, how many do you see that you do a year now? Like, what's your average you'll do now?
Probably about 10, like less than 10. It depends. Some of them are more intense than other ones. I just did 7 mobile homes in Paris all at once in about 10 weeks, and that one's gonna. We more had like a profit target, and if we hit that, there was some years that it took all year to hit that, and then some years we hit it in June, and we just kind of didn't work as hard the rest of the year.
Sure.
It just kind of, it depends. But right now, this year I'll probably do less than 10.
Okay. So do you guys have other staff involved, or you use subcontractors on everything? Contractors for everything. How do you structure your stuff?
Yep. All contractors, different crews, and those crews, some of them have their own subs. Some of them I run different crews, different subs through of my own. And then as far as staff, it's really just the 3 of us. We have a couple of, I have a VA, and then my girlfriend, Caitlin, definitely is a part of our side of the business too, as far as, acquisitions, and helps where she can. And we have a couple other, we have one more assistant. They have one more assistant. We actually recently went our separate ways amicably. We're still doing projects together, but instead of like doing it all under their companies, I have my own now, and it was a long time coming. It was just it took a while to do.
So when you say you've gone separate, you're talking about your mom and your stepdad, and you have kind of split ways, and you've created your own thing now, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
When I bought
Okay.
the club originally, 3 years ago now, I bought that separately from their stuff. Up until that time, we'd been flipping and doing everything under their companies. And then when I bought the club separately, it's like that kind of turned into its own thing. And and then from there, it was just, it was getting tougher and tougher because they wanted to slow down. I wanted to keep going. Their risk tolerance was different than mine. And we just, and it's funny, like, I mean, within a month after splitting off, we did a deal together. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're still all linked in. We're still talking about, we're right now, we're working on this retiring landlord out in the high desert that has upwards of like 40 properties he wants to get rid of. And we're tag teaming that at the moment on how to put that together. So,
So who do you think had the biggest influence on you? Your mom or your stepdad from a real estate perspective?
From real estate wise, I think definitely my stepdad. He was kind of he's definitely the lead on it. He was the one that convinced my mom to do it. He was the one that was, I think, crazy enough to actually do it. And, he went to a lot of those seminars, and, he never bought into like those like $50,000 guru programs or anything like that. But he definitely did the legwork on getting started and getting into it. And he was definitely no, but everybody else in the family, thought he was crazy, and they don't think that anymore. So, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's my stepdad, Evan.
So let's jump into where you guys are at now, what you're doing now. You bought the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. What was it, 20 or 21? I forget now.
2021, we officially did it. Yeah, I was running it for the year before that, but
gotcha. So walk me through what that process was for. What was the desire to own the club? What walk me through that process.
It was kind of like multifaceted. Primarily, I was part of the club, since like 2018. So I've been there a couple of years. I could tell that the guys who used to run it were kind of over it. That frustration had kind of spilled over, and I knew that it was a great resource. I actually, when I first bought my first rental, a week before Disneyland. They closed Disneyland on 2020. I actually closed the week after they closed Disneyland. I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. It was my first rental that I was going to be hanging on to. I didn't know if I should buy it or wait or whatever. And I came to the club, and, Steve, the previous owner, and Andy Teasley, we were in a, group session, and they asked me about the house, and I told them what the interest rate was. Well, I was actually nervous. I didn't want to say it for some reason. They're like, "Is there a 2 in front of it?" And I was like, "Buy the freaking house." And so there's a lot, like the club has definitely helped me out way before I ever ran it. I didn't want to see it go away. And I also, at the same time, I had experience running groups and meetups and, that kind of stuff. And I really thought that California specifically, I've been to a lot of the RIAs, and I just felt like I've been to a lot of the RIAs all over the country also. And like what they're doing in Ohio, they got these massive RIAs with multiple meetings, and in Florida where they're actually doing deals, and it's not just, somebody speaking once a month. They're all doing deals like back and forth. I just thought that was great. I was like, why not here? Like, I think we deserve that, and definitely have the population and the interest and the real estate shops to get it done. So, like I said, I just thought we could do it here, and I wanted to be a part of that and help build a platform to do that. So, that's what we set out to do, and we've a lot of it we've done, and we're just getting better.
So let me ask you, it's got me thinking, you bought this in 2021. So, COVID's going, that had to be an interesting time to take over a club in a weird time of history. What was it like when you first took, were you guys doing live events, or had all that kind of passed?
We were all on Zoom at that point. We were doing what everyone else was doing, with just the kind of right? The same, trying to make a meeting that worked live and put it into Zoom. And, at one point we sat down and we were just like, we're going to stop trying to do that because it's not working. Like, it's not the same thing. And, we started really cutting down the amount of time. We started doing multiple different meetings because we felt like everybody's attention span was just, gone. And people weren't going to sit on a Zoom meeting for 4 hours. They did it first and it was cool. Like, when we were all locked in, but after that, it was just like, wow, this is getting a little long. So we started cutting down our, if we did have a speaker, we started cutting down the time. And we started doing multiple events. We did like shorter, more frequent events through COVID. And, I took it over in 2020. Like I said, we didn't finalize the purchase until 2021. And then it took about 6 months. We were back in person. We did our first in-person major event at the Mission Inn in January of 2022. And I think we were as far as I know, we were the first RIA to be back, RIA style organization to be back in person, way ahead of most of them. Still, there's still some that are doing Zoom now and haven't gone back in person. And, but things changed. Things definitely changed. Everything got way more expensive. I mean, we were, by the time we decided, so we were at the Mission Inn, we gone back to the Mission Inn and it was costing almost $8,000 per meeting to have it at the Mission Inn. And I just kind of looked at the books and I was like, wow, we could probably get our own place at this point because we were doing that quarterly and we were going to a couple other places monthly. And so that meeting was costing that. And another one was costing, like $1,500 a month. And we just looked at it. And so we started looking for a bigger space. And then we found our own warehouse and kind of turned that into what was originally just a clubhouse for the club. And now it's morphed into something bigger. So we're calling it the Fire Center now. And it's going to host multiple groups, not just the Inland Empire Club. It's now going to be the host of 5 different groups. So it's definitely unlocked a lot of possibility, and we got a great future. So I'm excited for all that. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I say, I'm just trying to get our audience to kind of learn and hear like how you walked through this path, and then also now, like what stuff looking like going forward. So with your club, what do you see? What's your vision? You were there this weekend. You heard my vision for the Norris Group tying in with our all the organizations that I own, things like that. What is your vision for your club going forward? What does that look like?
Yeah. And I think Craig, we really, that's why I liked hearing what you had to say, over the weekend, is that, on the education side of the Norris Group and all that, I think we're very aligned. We rebranded our parent company, to FIRE. That stands for Financial Independence Through Real Estate, and that really is the goal. That's the mission, to provide top tier education events, and help our community of investors achieve financial independence through real estate. And I think that's people are kind of like, some people that run these groups and want that, they kind of look at me, they're like, well, duh. Like that's the whole thing. I mean, but I think it gets lost. Honestly, I think it gets lost in a lot of these RIAs, a lot of the organizations where people just end up giving themselves another job, whether that be flipping or wholesaling or running very management intensive style rentals. And that, I love real estate, but the real estate's the goal. Real estate's the vehicle. Financial independence is the goal. I got into this because I wanted freedom. I wanted to, I didn't want to have to do deals and have to work and do all this stuff if I didn't want to. If I wanted to take 3 months off and hit the road, I wanted the freedom to do that. And I think that's what most people really want at the end of the day that get into this. But it just gets lost at some point. So I'm putting that front and center. The whole goal is to help people achieve financial independence through real estate. So that's the mission. That's what we're focused on. And while we talk about flipping and wholesaling a lot, I'm part of the camp that's more buy and hold,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So with Fire, you're the new brand that you've got. Kind of walk me through the size of where's that at? What's the goal on? Is there a size you're trying to grow that brand to? Are you looking to keep that local as a local brand? Give me a little history on that.
That's so the Inland Empire, everything was branded under and operating just under the Inland Empire Real Estate Club, logo, I guess, or brand, I guess. I just felt like that kind of limited us to here. So we spun out, we did a meeting called Exchangers. That's a deal making meeting where people trade stuff and money and cash and deals and all kinds of stuff. That Andy and I started under IEREIC, years ago. And, we recently pulled that out. It's now its own thing, and we called it SoCal Exchangers. And we're focused on SoCal as more of a region instead of just the Inland Empire. I think that's probably the limit. Somebody asked me, well, why don't you just call it like US Exchangers and go for the whole country? That'd be great. But I think that style of meeting that we've borrowed ideas from other events, we kind of made it our own. And that style that we do now it can be too big. I think there's an upper limit of, we comfortably have about 70 to 80 people attending. We usually have like 20 people in person and like 40 people on Zoom. If we could double that, continuously, we'd have a great, we already have a great meeting, but we'd have an even better meeting every single week if we could attract, double that regionally and just have people that were doing deals here in Southern California. Once they go beyond that and you can't really verify stuff as easily, we have people from all over the country coming out. And I've done deals. I did a hypothecation with somebody in Virginia. But I think the meetings, it's best when it's more localized. And
Sure.
I think Southern California as a whole market in general just is a better focus. So
and then is everything operating under Fire then, or are the Fire brand, or do you still have the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club brand out there, or is everything switched to the Fire brand now?
Nope. IEREIC's still out there. The Inland Empire brand's still out there. That one's still going to focus on the Inland Empire in general. So we're sticking to our roots on that one. It's just almost like we created another parent company.
Okay.
We created what is Google's, instead of just being all Google.
Right.
It's not Meta, that's Facebook, Alphabet.
Yeah.
We basically just gave it a parent company that we're going to operate not just IEREIC, Inland Empire, but we're going to do SoCal Exchangers. We're going to do a Crestline focused one because I invest in the mountains a lot. And we're going to bring back like a cash flow game night kind of thing, but under its own thing. So it's just focused. So because what we noticed is we doing all these different events, but we get a different crowd every event. There's a diehard exchanger crowd that's not interested in the Wednesday night focus groups that we do. There's a diehard the people that like cash flow, playing cash flow all the time, but they don't really come to other stuff. So we're just gonna, like I said, rebrand some stuff. There's also and that's all going to happen under the Fire Center brand. So it's basically everything's housed under the Fire Center. So that's going to be the main brand going forward. And then the last group we're doing, it's just growing legs. It's barely growing legs, but I'm really excited about it. It's the California Real Estate Investors Alliance, and it's because under IEREIC, that's the other thing too on all of this. We had very specific or very strict no politics policy within IEREIC. I didn't want meetings to devolve into political debates and stuff like that. So we're going to make a group that's focused not on politics but on policy. There's a lot of us housing providers out there and other industry professionals that probably don't like the way things are going in Sacramento. We're going to so we're going to put together something. There's a committee of four assemblymen just writing law out of nowhere. That's kind of affecting us a lot. And I'm sure we all agree that a lot of these policies that are coming down that are meant to help renters are actually tying our hands behind our back from helping people a lot of times with the, the security deposit changes. And now they're talking about getting rid of, pet rent or pet deposits and fees and stuff like that. And that's a whole, I mean, I could go into that more, but, so we're going to put this group together, and we're basically just going to put an open call out there. Like, hey, anybody, see what we got, see what our network's like, see who knows who, and see what we can put together. And it might be something really cool and we can actually influence the policy, or it might not. I don't really know where it's going to go, but, I'm excited to at least put the word out there, the call out there, and see what we can do. So
that's awesome. So how does our audience connect with you from IEREIC or either your new Southern Cal Club? I mean, either one. How do they connect in that process?
The best way right now is to go to firecenterhq.com. Again, that's firecenterhq.com, and you can sign up for updates. And as we put these calls out, as we launch these groups, as we do updates, we can you be on that email list and get notifications. I'm pretty much like with the Alliance thing, with the CalRIA thing. I'm going to reach out to all the RIA captains, people like us, the education groups, and just say, hey, we're all going to meet here, probably at the Fire Center, on this date.
Yep.
Bring people that and that are serious, that want to be involved, and let's put something together.
So I'm understanding you've got a big event coming up that's already out there. Tell our audience about that. How can they get that information? And Joey was telling me that you got a special discount you want to offer to people today.
Yeah, absolutely. So John Schaub, part of having our own event center was nice, is that we can do we do a lot more events, have a lot of speakers out. We don't have to fork so much money over to the hotels. So, which I know you guys are very familiar with. So, so last year we had Pete Fortunato come out. Unfortunately, the event center wasn't ready at that point, so we had to do the hotel, but he's coming out again. And then not this weekend, but the following weekend, so the 22nd and 23rd of June, we have John Schaub coming out to do a private class at the Fire Center. It's going to be a two-day event. And if you don't know who John Schaub is, he wrote the book Building Wealth One House at a Time. It's a best-selling book that I think he's on his 4th edition of. A lot of those gurus and people that you've probably heard of probably learned from John at some point. He's been around a long time. He's one of the masters of real estate, and he's going to be out here for 2 days doing a full seminar on basically like the beyond his book, and like a really like a full blueprint on how to build wealth one house at a time beyond the book. So he hasn't been out here in like 5 years. I think the last time he was out here, he taught with someone else. He wasn't a solo class. So we're really honored. It's really special. He's going to be out here. I have no idea if he's going to come out again after this. I hope so. But, we're offering everybody listening out there, we're offering a discount to the Norris group. It's $100 off the ticket. You can use code Norris, and you can buy that ticket at IEREIC.org/SHAB24. Again, that's IEREIC.org/SHAB24. And use that code Norris, you get $100 off. And also we're doing on Saturday night, we're going to do a networking banquet kind of thing for all the attendees to come meet each other. And because part of these seminars isn't just the education part, it's a networking part.
That's right.
So, it's a lot of it's networking. So you get to meet, there's people coming down from, NorCal, up from San Diego, the whole West Coast. Cause like I said, John doesn't come out here that often. So it's going to be a special event. We got I think we only have about 20 tickets left. So if you want to go, buy one fast.
That's awesome. Well, listen, that's going to be a great event. John's a great speaker, a lot of wealth of knowledge and what John's done, been around for a long time and been very successful in what he does. So that's fantastic, man. I'm excited for you guys hosting that event. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it out. So otherwise I would be on a plane and be out there. That's going to be a great event, man. So well, listen, Rich, man, I am honored that you have taken time out to be with us today. I really appreciate your time and energies, man. I'm excited what you're doing there in the Inland Empire and the vision that you're casting, trying to not just, make money out of everything, but also, I mean, listen, we get up, we're doing this stuff because we want to make a living, right? We want to be successful and we want to have freedom in what we do. But I really love the passion that you bring to that about trying to help other people in what you're doing and help them be successful. So
yeah, absolutely.
For everybody
Absolutely.
listening, absolutely. Well, listen, for everybody listening, I'm thank you for your time today. Don't forget to check us out next week. We've got some great stuff coming up again. I know Joey will have that going, but for everybody on, thanks so much. Rich, thank you for coming today, buddy.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and look forward to working together as well.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.